Good day, mate. This is Mrs. Klein.
You busy and Mr. Creighton.
All right, you guys, we're here. We're moving into a new lesson. The lesson is entitled The Development of Feudalism in Western Europe. There's a guiding question just like the last lesson. This guiding question is, how well did feudalism establish order in Europe in the Middle Ages? And like always, there also are vocabulary or key terms that you should know that you should be responsible to know. This time around, they are Charlemagne, chivalry, Christianity, feudalism, fief, and serf.
All right. For this podcast, we're going to be focusing on sections 1, 2, and 3. So if you guys follow along in the textbook, we're looking at section 1, Western Europe during the early Middle Ages. For 500 years, much of Europe was part of the Roman Empire. The rest of the continent was controlled by groups of people the Romans called barbarians because they did not follow Roman ways. When Rome fell to invading barbarians in 476 CE, Rome was left with no central government or defense.
All right, Charlemagne's empire. One powerful group during this time was the Franks, from whom modern-day France takes its name. The Franks were successful because they had developed a new style of warfare that depended on troops of knights, heavily armed warriors who fought on horseback.
One of the early leaders of the Franks was an ambitious young warrior named Clovis. In 481 CE, at the age of 15, Clovis became leader of the Franks. 5 years later, he defeated the last great Roman army in Gaul at Soissons. During his 30-year reign, 300 would be pretty impressive.
It would be.
During his 30-year reign, he led the Franks in wars that largely extended the boundaries of the Frankish kingdom.
Clovis also helped convert the Franks to Christianity. But you guys, the most important leader of the Franks was a guy whose name is Charlemagne, which means Charles the Great. This impressive king ruled for over 40 years, from 768 to 814.
Legend has it that he read very little and couldn't write, yet he loved to have scholarly works read to him. He encouraged education and scholarship, making his court a center of culture. Most important, he unified nearly all the Christian lands of Europe into one single empire.
Charlemagne built his empire with the help of a pope, Leo III, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. The church was a central part of society during this time, and for Charlemagne, the blessings of the church sent the message, God is on my side.
The weak rulers who followed him could not defend the empire against new waves of invasions. Still, these kings helped prepare the way for a system of feudalism. By following Charlemagne's examples of rewarding knights with land and privileges in return for military service.
The next area, you guys, is about a need for order and protection. All right, in the 9th and 10th centuries, Western Europe was threatened by three main groups. Muslims, or the followers of the religion of Islam, advanced from the Middle East and North Africa into what is now Spain. The Magyars, a Central Asian people, pressed in from the east, and Vikings swept down from present-day Norway and Denmark.
The Vikings were fierce warriors who instilled fear in the people of Europe. To protect themselves and their property, they gradually developed a system we call feudalism.
All right, we're moving on to section 2, you guys, entitled Feudalism, Establishing Order. So again, there's bad stuff happening. There's like these three different groups of people who are coming in, and they need to have something that's going to help protect them.
Yeah, you don't have that strong Roman Empire anymore that protects them. We talked about how Roman citizens could travel the pretty much length of the empire without worried about being attacked, and that's now gone.
And now that's gone. All right, feudalism, establishing order. All right, by the High Middle Ages, about 1000 CE, Europeans had developed the system of feudalism. Feudalism provided people with protection and safety by establishing a stable social order.
The king kept some of the land for himself, and he gave fiefs, or land grants, to his most important lords who became his vassals. In return, each lord promised to supply the king with knights in times of war. A lord then established or enlisted lesser lords and knights as his vassals.
At the bottom of the social system were peasants. Some peasants were called serfs, and they were tied to the land that they worked, which basically meant, you guys, that they couldn't leave the lord's land without permission, and they had to farm his fields in exchange for a small plot of their own land.
All right, our final section we'll be looking at is monarchs during feudal times.
One thing I want to make sure that is clear, you guys, is you need to understand that during the Middle Ages, when you were born into one of those social settings, that was it. You weren't able to move up or down. If you were a serf, if you were born a serf, you died a serf. If you were a lord, you stayed a lord.
And it doesn't matter if you were a good warrior and you were a serf, you were stuck there, or if you were a terrible lord, it all depended on where you were born. All right, so number 3, our third and final one, is monarchs during feudal times. At the very top of the feudal society were the monarchs, which are kings and queens. Most medieval monarchs believed in the divine right of kings. This is the idea that God had given them the right to rule.
In some places, especially during the early Middle Ages, great lords grew very powerful and governed their fiefs as independent states. In England, monarchs became quite strong during the Middle Ages.
William the powerful Duke of Normandy, which is a part of present-day France, believed he had the right to the English throne. When William of Normandy conquered England, he brought feudal institutions from Europe with him. Supported by feudalism, strong rulers brought order to England. All right, guys, so that was the end of this part of the podcast. Just a reminder, we're going to be spinning the wheel coming up pretty soon, and you guys will have a lesson quiz coming up after the next podcast. All right, guys, see you in class.
See ya.